welcome to this free webinar on being and doing, how to achieve things in these challenging times. And I'm just going to say a very little bit about myself and about how the webinar will run. So for those of you who've not met me before, I'm an occupational psychologist, and I work as a coach and trainer and workplace mediator. I also do now, I've always done online coaching as well as face-to-face, but I now do online workshops as well for my clients. And I work in two main areas. One is around communications and issues in the workplace, and the other is around resilience and stress management, etc. So what we're going to cover today is, in terms of this being and doing, is first of all look at where are you currently at. We're in very unusual times, so reflecting on personally where you're at. What do you want to achieve, whether that's in or outside of work, and how does your being affect your doing? And I'm going to introduce two models and briefly go through them in terms of emotional intelligence and the zone of optimal performance, and then talk a little bit about my being and doing course, which is an 8-week online course, which I'm, during this whole period, I'm offering at half price. So it's £49 including VAT instead of £99 including VAT. So I'll say more about that later. So so where are you now? We're in a pandemic. We're in a time which none of us have ever experienced before. We have no idea how long it's going to go on or whatever. So are you in chaos? Do you feel that you're barely surviving and just about keeping things together? Are you really procrastinating? Are there things, whether that's you're working at home now and there are things you want to get on with, or you might be furloughed, or you might be made redundant, and there's a whole list of things to do, but you're procrastinating. Maybe you're focusing very much on your being and learning how to thrive, or maybe you're working through steadily through your to-do list, or you're a mixture of all of the above. I certainly, everyone I'm speaking to, and including myself, it's a bit of a roller coaster. So you might be going from, yes, I'm on form, I'm doing things, to everything's in chaos. So what you might want to reflect on is actually, what do you want to do and achieve? It may just be, it's very hard to think beyond the next kind of few weeks, really. So it might be, but it might be longer term. Is it that actually you just want to keep going as much as possible, as usual? Is it something you want to learn, something new? So I know a lot of people who aren't working at the moment, and so learning new languages, musical instruments, etc. I was on a Zoom call with my family at the weekend, and my brother had out his old juggling clubs, which I completely forgot that he had. Not that he is working hard, but something else for him to do. Are there a list of tasks that you do want to? Maybe you'll want to find a new job. One of my friends said that one of the things she's realised, that what she enjoyed about her job was her colleagues, and now she's stuck at home doing her job without her colleagues. She's not enjoying it. So you might not be able to find a job right now, but you might kind of think, well, actually, what job do I want? Or I'm thinking about, actually, how do I run my own business? How do I do it differently in the future? So, and are you reassessing how you want to live your life post, lockdown? When things start to return to normal, it's going to be a new normal. Or is it that you want to learn to how really thrive in this period? And that's certainly something that I'm kind of aiming for. And then thinking about, well, actually, how does your being affect how you do things? What aspects of your being, what kind of characteristics do you need to develop to help you to do? So it might be that actually you need more patience. That might be patience with the other people that you're living with. It might be patience with life. It could be that you need to get more organized or motivated. So think about those being, characteristics of your being that you want to work on and develop. And also, is you might think about what behaviors will help you in terms of your being. And I always believe passionately in practicing what I preach. Sometimes I regret that because I really have to live it. So I woke up this morning feeling incredibly low and very, very anxious. And I'd been coaching clients yesterday, and I found that with my coaching clients, because they're going through very difficult situations, one who's got a colleague who's very, very seriously ill and has been for a long time with COVID in intensive care. And, you know, and supporting lots of other people, you know, whether it's friends, family, etc. And I think I've just kind of worn out by it all. And I woke up and as I said, I felt very low, very anxious. And with a list as long as, you know, my arm or whatever of things to do. And I'm a Buddhist, I did my Buddhist practice, still felt really low and anxious. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go out and cycle. I was going to cycle later on in the day after I'd got on with some work. And I just thought, no, I know it will lift my spirits. I'm very fortunate to live kind of near countryside, you know, I can cycle around and see fields. I found a new lane that I could go down, came out to a beautiful view. And when I came back, I just felt so much better. And uplifted. So sometimes it's thinking about what behaviors do we need to do in order to help our being, in order to do. And so, you know, really think about that. And I was reflecting on this as I was cycling, that there's been a kind of letter from a teacher to parents that's been going around on Facebook. And I don't know whether it's kind of really from a teacher, but I'm guessing it, you know, it was to start with, but it does make sense. And this teacher was saying to parents, don't worry if you don't keep up to date with all of the, you know, all your students, or your not students, your children's studies. She said, we'll be able to catch up in the autumn, and everyone's going to be across the world's going to be behind anyway, so we'll be able to catch up. But she said, but if your children are traumatized and anxiety ridden and still are in the autumn, then that is going to be much harder to deal with. And I was thinking, and I'm going to come on to about emotional intelligence, is what she's talking about actually, if you work on helping them to really thrive in this period, and that means you as parents and as a family thrive, then actually that's going to help them longer term when they go back to full-time kind of education. So so that's just kind of, you know, an example of sometimes what we need to do in order to help our being, in order to help us do the other things. So as you can see, I've kind of come back in a fine feta now to get on with my work. So what I want to do is to and feel free if you've got any questions as we kind of go through, is what I want to do is to look at two models from the Being and Doing course. Obviously, we go into much more detail, but the first thing is from week 2, where we explore about emotional intelligence. And with emotional intelligence, and really what that teacher was talking about is about emotional intelligence, is that, and all the research has shown that actually in today's world and working world, it is emotional intelligence that actually helps us succeed over IQ. And in fact, it's a well-known fact now that people who have incredibly high IQ often lack the emotional intelligence. But I have to say, a lot of us could develop our emotional intelligence, but it is what really helps us to win through. Now, there's lots of different models of emotional intelligence that are more complex than this, but I like this just simplicity. And you might want to, on your handout, I kind of said, is maybe score yourself on each of these. So the first thing is about self-awareness, is, you know, are you aware of your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings, and then the impact that that has on how you communicate and how you are. And so, you know, there's lots of things I do with clients and in my Being and Doing online course about raising people's self-awareness and checking in with yourself. And so, for example, this morning, it was very clear to me that I was not in a great place. But lots of people who aren't kind of very self-aware kind of just try and plow on rather than use that self-awareness to do something. The second point is about self-management. So we might be aware of our thoughts and feelings, but not know how to manage them. So actually, how can we manage those? Before I went out on my bike ride, I'm speaking to my mum. She's 85. I speak to her twice a day. And I rang her, and actually my brother answered. He was there doing the weekly shop and dropping that off. And I spoke to him, was very honest with both of them. But also the different issues can, come up talking with family, but I was kind of very kind of calm, because often if we aren't good at self-management, it can infect our mood, can then affect our relationships with other people, whether that's with family or colleagues. And I think people working remotely from colleagues at the moment is a real challenge. So again, all my coaching and my training, etc., is about giving people lots of tools and techniques to be aware and to manage themselves. Is then to have empathy for other people is a vital part of emotional intelligence. And I was doing a webinar recently, and there were a couple of parents of teenagers on the call and on the webinar, and one of them kind of said, my teenager's driving me a bit insane. They're not getting out of bed until midday or whatever else. And I just kind of said, obviously, being out of the family, can look at it completely objectively, but I was just kind of saying, actually, I would not want to be a teenager today, never mind the pandemic. I still wouldn't want to be a teenager today. But then you throw in a pandemic, and I can't imagine how difficult it must be for them, where everything, and if they were working towards exams, they've gone. They don't know if they're thinking going off to university in the autumn. Who knows whether they're going to be able to go, and all of those sorts of things. And they're stuck at home with their family. And so that's that kind of empathy to be able to step into somebody else's shoes. That again can help us to do and to improve our relationships with other people. So my dear brother, in fact, actually, for health reasons, and I'm a long way away from my family, but from health reasons I can't go there and support them and support my mum. So my brother did answer the phone and said to me, this is your personal food delivery service. And I said, and car mechanic and phone mechanic, because those are all the things that have gone wrong in the last few weeks with my mum. So, for me to keep on trying to step into my brother's shoes, and actually that, how difficult it is for him. He's working full time. He also runs a business in his, the rest of his time, and he's doing all of this. So how we can step into other people's shoes is an important part to help us to interact and therefore be able to do whatever it is we need to do. And that also then comes on to our interpersonal skills, how we can be calm and rational and assertive with people. I was speaking to a friend the other day who was really irate with somebody else who said to me, she was very assertive. And I said, well, then she was probably aggressive, because there's no such thing as really very assertive. Assertive is actually very respectful. Clashes that are kind of going on when we're all kind of feeling very stressed. I often I carry this around with me when I'm doing my training, my coaching, and it's an old-fashioned room thermometer, but to talk about people's emotional temperature. Is that if your emotional temperature is always up here, then it doesn't take much for you to go off the scale. Whereas if you are using lots of tools and techniques to keep your emotional temperature down, is that you might have little blips, but you can come down much quicker. And what I've noted with myself during this period is that once a week, it's now kind of got to, it was a more often at the beginning, but kind of once a week, I have a really, as I said to text two friends of mine today, a pooey day. not a great day. And but because I've been developing my emotional intelligence, my self-awareness, I do things to help me manage what's going on and process it, let it out in a constructive way in my journal and all of those sorts of things. I'm able to move through it really quickly. And for most of the time is that it's only been a couple of hours that I've kind of stayed. I've been able to move through in some sort of way, often about reaching out to people as well, and being honest with people, with the people who I know who will then come back, and support me, who I, am normally supporting them. So if you have, again, any questions around emotional intelligence, then feel free to ask. But as I said, it's something we go into more depth on the Being Doing course. But I think it's important to kind of reflect which bits you might want to work on yourself. So let's move on to the second model that is from week 1 of Being and Doing. And when I share it with you, I think you'll realize why it's so important and why it's in week 1. And so what you have is, and I use this model when talking about the difference between pressure and stress, because a lot of people kind of say, oh, actually, stress is good for you. And it's like, no, a certain level of pressure is good for you. But once it becomes stress, then it's not good for you. And this model shows why. So you've got where you've got increasing demands and pressures. So if you haven't got enough demands and pressures on you, you feel very understimulated, bored, demotivated. You could actually be quite busy, but bored out of your mind. And this is kind of where my friend who's working from home kind of said, actually, I really hate my job. But actually it was the people who made it worthwhile and the interactions. And she's in that kind of understimulated and having to do things to help motivate her to do the work. There's a lot of people who are furloughed, unemployed, etc., who might be in that understimulated. So how you kind of actually increase the demands on yourself is, having a routine, etc., is that to help you to kind of increase the stimulation that you're having, really. So as the demands and the pressures increase, you get to that zone of optimal performance. And it's where we feel energized, we're motivated, we're challenged, we're stretched but not strained, we're even excited about our work, we're in that flow. And it's where I really feel this week I had a blip this morning, that's fine, kind of come over that. But actually I've got a nice level of work. Last week there wasn't so much kind of coaching work, but a nice level work, some webinars that I'm attending as well as ones I'm running, but space to cycle, space to do things that actually will help me. And I'm in that zone of optimal performance. And what happens though, if you are always at the top of that zone, it doesn't take much to tip you over. So, and I often, when I'm sharing this with clients, is that people kind of say, actually, I'm at the top. And all it takes is a few bad nights, or someone in the family, children fall ill or whatever else, or something change happens that tips you over. And once we're tipped over, we are into that thing where that zone where we're feeling stressed, we're strained, we're overwhelmed, which I have been at points over the last few weeks, and the brain goes into threat response. And I don't have time to kind of go into detail here about the brain's threat response, but once it gets triggered, it's at fight, flight, or freeze. You are not in the right headspace to be able to make decisions to work effectively. So it really does affect, your being really does then affect your doing. And so you might want to kind of think about, actually, where are you? So feel free to share if you're happy to share where you are in this zone, or maybe share about actually what keeps you in that zone of optimal performance, or what can you do to get into that zone of optimal performance. So, for me this morning, it was go for a bike ride. I knew that, even though I've got things to do, I knew that actually I was going to be far more effective if I had that bike ride. And it raises my kind of, you know, energy levels. So think about what is it that's really supporting you during this period to be in that zone. You know, if you are, if you're with a family, talk about it as a family. What is it that really helps you? Is that, you know, how can you make sure you have fun? And I'm talking to lots of friends and clients who've got family, is that they are often, you know, they're saying actually what's great is that they're spending more family time together and can do some fun things. They're not stretched by commuting to work or rushing around doing all, you know, taking the children to different activities, and actually they are able to do things that helps them to be in that zone and to thrive. So somebody has said, so they're in the stretch zone currently, lots of planning required, and structure to each day, and focus on self-learning and exercise. So so I think is that, I'm guessing if you say the stretch zone, so you're in that kind of zone of optimal performance. And I think there is that fine line from being stretched to then strained. And it's being able to spot the early warning signals. And it's something that, this is very peculiar to me, but it might ring true to some of you, is what I've noticed over the years is, because when I'm in that really energized and everything's going well, and I can kind of think I can take on more and more, and then I get overloaded, and I get to the point, I've noticed that, and it's purely my metaphor, that when I feel like I'm flying and I kind of like, yes, I'm flying, I now know I'm going to crash and burn any moment now, because I'm running on adrenaline. So I can spot very quickly when I start to run on adrenaline and I'm taking on too much. And so I need to kind of come back and center myself. So and this is where this emotional intelligence of really being in touch with your thoughts, how you are physically, as well as emotionally, and being able to check in with yourself, and spot very quickly, so that you can then take action. And I think particularly if in a family environment, or if you're working remotely, so if you're used to working in an office, your colleagues might be quite good at picking up. They might spot when you're feeling a bit low, and, you know, let's have a cup of tea, or you have a chat, or you have a bit of a laugh, and it lifts you. So you don't have that. And so it's about actually how can you do that for yourself. So so any kind of questions or any thoughts, then again in the chat box feel free to ask. I'm just going to very quickly go through the themes of the Being and Doing. It's an 8-week course, and you might want to reflect as I go through them, is in terms of what you what was I going to say, in terms of which areas might be of kind of use to you. So the week 1 is about the being and doing, and the zone of optimal performance, and obviously we go into it much more depth than here, and you and explore it in more depth. In week 2 we look at the hero's journey as well, which comes from Joseph Campbell, and about overcoming obstacles, as well as your looking at emotional intelligence. And the reason for that is that whenever you do start something new, it's very easy for the obstacles to come up, and you kind of give up very early on. Week 3 is all about managing your mind, your mood, your mind, and your motivation. So lots of different tools and techniques to increase your self-awareness, but also to help to manage yourself. Week 4 is understanding yourself, part 1. There is a part 2, which is about your personality type, but also who you see yourself. What's your identity, which I think could be quite interesting in these very different times as well, how you kind of see yourself. Week 5 is about developing a growth mindset. This is based on Carol Dweck's work about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Really important in terms of our being and our doing. It affects not just how we learn, but how we approach work and life, and how we deal with obstacles, mistakes, etc. Week 6 is about your sphere of influence and expanding your sphere of influence and how you communicate and influence other people. And we look at how to build rapport, which is actually really important when you if you're working remotely with clients and colleagues, maybe it's with your family, extended family, friends, whoever else, but also how we can communicate in a really constructive way. Week 7 is about understanding yourself, part 2, and there's 2 things there. We look at TA drivers, so what drives you at a psychological level, and then I introduce a model which is called I'm Okay, You're Okay, which you might have come across before, which is an incredibly useful model for reflecting on yourself. Really, really useful. And then week 8 is returning home and celebrating. This is based on the hero's journey, is reviewing your successes you've had over the 8 weeks and what you've learned and exploring what next. And you have lifetime access to all the material, so you can carry on using them. So what you get each week is on Monday, you get 2 videos. So they're usually about 15-20 minutes, some that are a bit longer. On Wonderful Wednesdays, there's a kind of summary, reminders, and some inspiring quotes. Sometimes I throw in a TED talk that's kind of optional that you can look at. Is that on Fantastic Friday. So each Friday I share with you a different way of reviewing and learning from the week. So you end up with 8 very simple but effective different techniques to help learn from your experiences. And it's also about every Friday is about how to plan your weekend, and so that you have good weekends. And I think that's even more important now, is that everyone kind of thinks, well, because I'm at home the whole time, is that, you know, some people are just working through the weekends, or you might be furloughed, or you unemployed, or whatever else, is that you, I think it's really important that we do distinguish our weekends, that maybe we have special kind of activities that we do that we can look forward to, and that you can enjoy those at the weekends. I'm really into, in a very simplistic way, painting and listening to Radio 4 plays at the weekend. Also got games, Zoom meetings with my family, so we all play games and quizzes and things like that, so another thing to look forward to. So that's the what you get through the being and doing. I'm just keeping an eye on the time, so we're nearly and half past. As I said, there's a 50% reduction. The next cohort starts next Monday. So if you'd like to join us, it's £49 including VAT, instead of £99. But even after that cohort, there will be others, or people can kind of join whenever they want to get start. I also offer free coaching audits to individuals and managers and businesses. And if you're not already registered, I think people are, but if you're not registered on the website, which is inspiredtransformation.co.uk, do that, and then you'll receive Melanie's Monday motivational messages. I'm doing kind of short video thoughts for the days occasionally, monthly Inspire newsletter, and also news about these free webinars as well. But feel free if you want to email me afterwards as well if you do have any questions. So thank you very much for coming along, and go safely and have a good day. So thank you.